Hi everyone, I'm Benjamin, welcome to my book club. Before we talk about Dune Messiah, there's a quote from the original book that I think perfectly encapsulates the story of Dune Messiah. It's from when Liet Kynes is dying in the desert and he's hallucinating his father. And his father comes to him and says, "No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero." So after finishing Dune, I immediately jumped into Dune Messiah. I know a lot of people have a divided opinion on Dune Messiah, so I'm here to give my stance on it. But first, just right off the bat, there are going to be spoilers for the original book in here. I'm not going to be giving away any major spoilers for Messiah, but the original book I'm going to talk about. And if you haven't read it yet, you should. If you've only seen the movies and you're coming here to see if you should check out Messiah, my suggestion, as in my Dune review, is that you should read the book. There are some major differences in the book that make jumping into Messiah a little bit confusing if you've only seen the new movies. But if you don't want to read Dune, then at least go study up on the changes. Go watch a YouTube video or read some posts about the differences between the movie and the book. That being said, let's get into it. Dune, the original book, is split into 3 parts. It's split into Part 1, Dune, Part 2, Muad'Dib, and Part 3, The Prophet. And in my mind, Messiah just easily stands as Part 4, Messiah. It serves as an epilogue to Dune. It doesn't stand alone as its own book very strongly. It requires Dune for its plot to make sense. It's serving as the epilogue. It's serving as the continuation and the outcome of the story of Dune. After Paul Atreides' quest for vengeance against the Harkonnens and the Emperor in Dune, Messiah shows the world that is left behind after that. The world that Paul saw in the cave, the world that Paul saw after drinking the water of life, and was the only path he could walk through time that would let him defeat his enemies, the Harkonnens and the Emperor. And now Paul is stuck living in this world. Messiah is a story about power and how that can trap someone, that Paul is trapped not only by this vision of the future that he walks, but also by the power of being the Emperor. He can't just walk away. His sister Aaliyah serves now as the head of his church, as a saintly figure and a prophet for pilgrims the galaxy over to come visit. Both of them, Paul and Aaliyah, lament the loss of their life in the desert. They both at separate times wish to return to a simpler life in the desert of Dune. But that desert doesn't exist anymore. As part of the moving forward of the planet Arrakis, Paul has succeeded where Liet Kynes dreamed. He's brought water to the world. There are now small rivers and gullies. There's still large amounts of desert, but there's green plant life. It's rained on Arrakis for the first time in history, thanks to Paul Atreides, the Emperor. And this has softened the planet somewhat. We see the changes over the 12 years between the first book and Messiah. And we see how it's changed the characters. We see how it's changed the planet. We see how it's changed the races and the galaxy. And we see how not all those things have been changed for the better. In fact, I think for the average citizen of the human empire, they would argue that things were better off before Paul Atreides. The Fremen Jihad has spread across the known universe, bringing all worlds under its yoke into the control of the religions spread by Paul's empire, bringing them all under that religious government theocracy that Paul has created. The book often talks about the linking of religion and government, and how that means that, for example, when you break a law, it's not just breaking a law, it's also sinning now, and how that changes the way humans have to react in this world, and it changes how you as the leader of the government can change things. You can't change things simply because it's all based on theocracy. It's all based on your legend and your prophecies. 60 to 70 billion human lives have been lost at the hands of the Fremen Jihad. A simply staggering number, something that is untenable by human minds. It's almost half of all humans that are estimated to have existed up till now have been killed by the Fremen Jihad. And Paul is powerless to stop it. He had chances, I believe, in the first book to turn from this path to stop the Jihad happening, but he didn't take them. And now it's too late. It's happened. There's nothing he can do. He can't even kill himself because then he's just a martyr. He laments that no matter what he does, the religion is a life of its own. He might be at the core of the belief, but the religion will find a way to take any action he does and use it towards its own purposes. Where in the first book, Paul is unquestionably the main character, we do still see other characters. And we do see other characters in Messiah, and they are great. But in Dune, these other characters had this sense of agency and purpose, and some of them were very divorced from the Atreides situation. In Dune Messiah, the story is absolutely about Emperor Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Usul to some of the Fremen. And every other character's story, motivations, and actions revolve around Paul. The entire story orbits Paul as though he's a dense black hole at the center of it. We sit in on council meetings led by Paul. We see public appearances by the Emperor Paul Atreides. We see public appearances by his sister, the prophet Elia. We see the Fremen and how they've changed in this last 12 years. Some of them have become soft and weakened by the water wealth that has come to their land. Some of them have become hedonists, accepting rewards and experiences that no Fremen could have ever imagined, and in doing so have lost that core that made them so strong. In the first book, we learned that the Sardaukar, the Emperor's forces, are from the prison planet, Salusa Secundus, and they are such a strong fighting force because of the harsh conditions that they're in. And we learn that they can't stand up to the Fremen because Arrakis is such a harsh planet that it has bred this hard fighting force. Paul even talks in one of the chapter headings in the original book about how, because of the ban on atomic weapons and weapons research and the limit on technological advancement, the remaining step for military advancement is in breeding of humans, is in breeding of the soldiers to be better, and that he felt that it was untapped. And now the Fremen are softer. They've lost that. There are still desert Fremen. There are still wild Fremen. But they're rarer. They're not as loyal to Paul as some of the others. We see a lot of Paul's old Fedaykin, his death commandos, unquestionably the most powerful fighting force in the universe 12 years ago. Now many of them are officials. Some of them are heads of the church. They have riches and wealth. We see Fremen that are coming back from the jihad as bitter men, injured, disfigured. We see some of them coming back having seen the oceans for the first time, and it's changed them intrinsically. Whereas at the end of Dune, it seemed like Paul was unquestionably the leader of all Fremen. Now it seems like a lot of the Fremen are questioning whether this was all worth it. Was achieving Liet Kynes' dream like this a disaster? The overhanging emotion through the whole story is dread. Very early on, Paul reveals that he knows the path he's walking on leads to terrible tragedy, but no other path leads to anything better. They lead to human extinction. There's almost a hint that even if there was another path that would lead to something better, Paul feels unable to follow it. Paul has been prescient for so long. He's lived this life many times in his head trying to figure this out. He feels trapped. All he can do now is walk the path. Imagine if you were to give some random person full knowledge of their life, how boring and dull and numb the rest of their life would be if they know every conversation they're ever going to have, they know every action they're ever going to perform. There's no mystery left, there's no surprise. And it's because of this and the outcome that Paul knows is coming that he's just numb and sad and divorced from the world. And he's a shadow of the man that he was in the first book. We see a lot of Elia in this book, and her sections are fantastic. Paul's sister Elia as a preborn, when Jessica took the water of life and gained all the memories of all the Reverend Mothers before her, Elia in the womb gained that as well. She gained awareness and sentience and consciousness at that point. And she's struggling with that. She's struggling with the idea that she's never been able to be her own person. She's never grown into the person that she wants to be. She doesn't know if she is her own person. If anything, she's following this path because Paul's following this path. And even if she disagrees and fears for her brother's safety, she's stuck just as much as Paul is. I won't spoil the ending of Messiah, but I will say that in my mind, I think it's perfect. It is the perfect ending to this 2-book series. It has the exact themes and emotions, and it left me just staring at the ceiling for about an hour thinking about it after I finished it. And I thought it was such a perfect ending that I strongly considered not moving on from this point, not reading Children of Dune or God Emperor or going any further. Messiah is not as easy a read as the original Dune. If Dune is the fun, action-packed adventure movie, Messiah is more of a slow, methodical, philosophical treatise on what life is. And it's a lot slower. Most chapters involve 2 or more characters having a conversation or a debate about ideologies and about religion and government and the future and humans and what it is to be a ruler. But they're all very interesting, and I loved seeing inside the heads of some of these characters that we maybe didn't get to spend a lot of time with in the original book. I think the moments of action that Messiah has are all the greater for how jarring they are against the rest of the book, about how you can see how dull life might be for some of these characters now, so routine, that the action sections just spike at the heart of the story and pump the adrenaline up. Whereas Dune had moments of elation and success and triumph, Messiah has slower moments of building dread, knowing that going in that things are going to go badly. Every character is telling you that, but there's this hope that you're like, no, I love these characters, and despite their faults, and maybe they're not the good guys we once thought they were, you still want things to work out for them. You want Paul to use his genius mentat abilities to find a twist, a chink in the armor of time that he can slip into and save everybody. The characters in this book are fantastic. We have returning characters like Stilgar and Shani, who both massively come into their own in this book, I think. Shani especially is much more interesting in this book than she was in the previous one for me. She's still not as good as I think she is in the movie. I really like Zendaya's Shani, but in Messiah, she's perfect. She's really well done. Stilgar as the right hand of Paul Atreides, as the nominal head of the Fremen, trying to navigate this bureaucracy that is just so alien to him and how that's affecting him. We have Aaliyah, the sister. I've talked about her. She's amazing in this one. We meet some fantastic new characters. We meet a face-changing assassin. We meet a guild navigator face-to-face. We meet members of the Bene Tlaxu, a technologically, I don't know if I want to say advanced, but technologically different group. We see more of the Bene Gesserit and their plans and how they're dealing with the fact that their plan has gone so astray. Thousands of years of Bene Gesserit planning have resulted in Paul, the child that wasn't meant to exist yet. He exists too early for them, and they don't have control of his bloodline or his throne. We see a conspiracy against Paul with a bunch of these characters that aim to take control of that bloodline and take Paul off the throne and return it to someone that they can control. Princess Irulan is in this book, Paul's wife in nothing but name, and we see her dealing with 12 years of embarrassment for a royal. She's dealing with the fact that Paul hasn't given her a child. Paul doesn't name her empress. Paul doesn't name her wife in public. She is his wife, but only because he wanted to sit on the throne. I love Dune Messiah. I love what it does. Messiah accomplishes in this book what Paul maybe wishes he could. Messiah effectively reaches into my past and changes my experience of reading Dune. It recolors everything I remember reading from Dune in the light of where things ended up. Where in Dune, I could tell that Paul wasn't the greatest hero of all time. I still felt like he was a good guy building towards a good goal. But now, knowing what I know from Messiah and knowing the story, it recontextualizes a lot of Dune. And I see that Paul's overriding goal was revenge and vengeance against the Harkonnens and the Emperor. And he used everyone he could along the way. He had points to step off this path that led to this universe. But those paths didn't lead to the destruction of his enemies. So he discarded them. Just as he would discard any one person that wasn't vital to his goals. Dune Messiah gets an easy 10 out of 10 from me. I hesitate to say this with recency bias being such a factor, but I think I like this more than I liked the first book. I've never read a book that has the power to change my experience retroactively of another book. To so flip on its head the messages I thought I was getting from the first book. I see why people might not like this. I see why people read Dune and resonate with it so well, and then pick up this book and find out that no, they weren't meant to do it like that. I get that. I get the revulsion from inside of being told that you were so wrong and you took it so wrong. But for me, it works. It's such a powerful book. The story of Paul Atreides comes full circle and has the perfect epilogue to Dune. I happily recommend that everybody read this book. I think of it as an epilogue to Dune. I think this is required reading. If you read Dune, I think you should absolutely read Dune Messiah. But you should do so knowing the power that this text has. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I am going to move on to Children of Dune. I've actually already started it, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So there will be a video for Children of Dune coming up. And I would be surprised if I didn't then move on to God Emperor. I am surprised, I shouldn't be saying this, it's such a popular series, but I'm surprised by how much I've just fallen into the world of Arrakis and how invested I am now. I'd love to hear in the comments what your thoughts are on Messiah. I know not everyone's going to agree with me. It's a very divisive book. I'd love to know what people think of Heretics of Dune and Chapter House Dune, and if I should continue on after God Emperor of Dune. I abhor unfinished stories, so that's the only reason why I'm tempted to ignore it. But perhaps the sequel books written by Frank Herbert and I can't remember the other author's name, I apologise, will fill the gap at the end. I'm not sure. If you'd like to check out my other book reviews, including my Dune review, the playlist is right up here. I'd love if you could leave a like and leave a comment talking to me about Dune. And remember to keep reading.